People are absolutely critical to our business. We're a software company, and the majority of our assets, the majority of our expenses go towards people. Humans are complex, and so as a leader, you have to understand the complexities. And that means listening and getting out of your own way and making it not about you, but about the people you're leading.
This is Leaders247. I'm your host, Gordon Whitehead. Our guest today is Hal Halladay. Hal is the Chief People Officer at Infusionsoft, a fast-growth, people-focused company. In this interview, he provides powerful insight on the art of leadership as both a people function and an organizational function. Hal has a wealth of knowledge on leading organizations, leading startups, and leading people. He has been a top officer and founder of several startups and has been responsible for helping many companies get both their startup capital as well as startup leadership. You will find amazing credentials on his LinkedIn page, which we will share in our podcast notes. Hal is a visionary strategic leader, but he's also quite unique in that he stays grounded and understands what it takes to lead people of all types and at all levels through a successful venture. We are pleased to present Hal Halladay on our Leaders247 podcast series. Would you take some time to tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. I'm grateful to be here with you today, Gordon. My background is kind of interesting. I started as an engineering student because I love to solve problems with math, and I had some fear of being stuck in a cubicle, so I turned to business finance where I could use math to solve problems. And I spent 7 years as an investment banker working in finance, and then continued kind of in the financial arena, and changed when I left investment banking to go work in some startups, sort of the late 90s when technology was really starting to thrive. And while I've always cared about leadership, I've cared about empowering people, I've never had a role where that was my direct responsibility. So my background is finance, but I find myself responsible for the people functions and the HR functions of a fast-growing software company. And I guess maybe that fits a little bit about my personality. I like trying new things. I like taking on challenges, and got some adventure in me. So it works out, and turns out that the people functions are becoming more math and analytical and predictive. So it's a good fit for me.
Hey, that's awesome. When you say people functions are becoming a little bit more analytical and sort of numbers or math-based, I mean, could you just explore that a little bit more with us?
Yes, it's interesting as our ability, the world, let's say, to capture, measure, report data. We're seeing it all over the world, big data in so many different places. It's first started to really impact marketing, where demand generation technology played a critical role in how marketing now functions, and it's very math driven, and it's much about optimization as there are predictive analytics and models that help you understand your customers and your prospects. Likewise, in terms of acquiring talent, it's a funnel game just like it is acquiring customers. So you've got to talk to so many people, and you've got some models that might predict who are the best fit for your company. You might be able to scale a survey question where lots of people could give you feedback, or you could learn about them without ever anybody talking to them. And then you've got data around the group. You might be able to use data to decide which school you might recruit at or invest in to spend more time there because you've got a higher acceptance rate there. We measure performance, and we measure accountability to performance. We're getting better at it every day, but tracking and measuring the people function is absolutely a high growth and cutting edge technology. And there are companies that are measuring, having employees wear a taggable technology. It sounds a little creepy at first, but so they can see where the movements of employees are, where the interactions are happening, and the patterns. We aren't doing that, but I'm trying to learn about it. And there are companies so they can plan their workspace to where people move and where interactions happen, and they can help enable that through understanding and following the data that informs them. So it is becoming an absolute part of the HR and people function.
Wow, that's really amazing. Very fascinating. Thank you. Does that really begin to explain what is meant by Chief People Officer at Infusionsoft? I mean, do you get involved in let me restate that question. How do you approach this title of Chief People Officer?
Well, for one, people are absolutely critical to our business. We're a software company, and the majority of our assets and the majority of our expenses go towards people. So acknowledging maybe that wouldn't always have been a chief function, but it is very strategic to the business. The people we hire, how we train them and enable them to do their best work, letting go of the people that aren't the right people, getting their compensation right, giving them the opportunity to do their best work here is so strategic to our business. And that hasn't always been the case, but it is more and more as software companies, more and more things are software in business. In our case, we just care a lot about people, and so we wanted to elevate that function to a CEO reporting role. In my role specifically, I lead a team called People Operations, and this is also a little different than maybe traditional organizational structure, but I lead the people functions, which are kind of the HR, compensation, leadership, the facilities and the environment that we provide for our employees, the training, and also the operations, which are the systems and the processes that we use. And so we think that people and operations, or what we call people operations, serve leaders. That's our job, to help leaders do the best job they can to make employees happy and successful. So people operations, and my role as Chief People Officer in leading people operations, is to enable leaders to create happiness and success with our employees. And that's, I think, a fairly new way of looking at traditional HR functions.
You know, that says a lot about your company, and I do know a lot about your company, and that's 100% consistent. So thank you for sharing that. That's definitely I think how the future is moving. So, you know, you're all about attracting and developing people, and you spent quite a bit of time talking about that. Are there any nuggets here in terms of how do you really go about doing that? And actually, let me just twist that just a little bit. How do you go about developing and attracting future leaders for your organization?
I'm not sure anyone should think about attracting the very best people, because that's a relative term. Really, the question leaders or people that are hiring employees should ask is, who are the best fit for what we do? Who are the best fit for the kind of customers we serve? Who are the best fit for our business model? Who are the best fit for our values? So first of all, before you go out and hire one person, you should be absolutely clear about what your business is and what it stands for, or what your team is and what it stands for. And that's the key aspect of hiring. Is the first step is being clear about your purpose and your values and what it means to work at your company. Then you've got to be disciplined to adhere to those to those values and to that purpose. And that's really the challenge. It isn't very complicated, but it is hard to do. And so you might face somebody, we do, who has a incredible amount of skill, and in some conversations would be the very best person for the job. But if they don't match the values we have, a value that for example, one of our values is we practice open and real communication, and we check our egos at the door. If that person who is so skilled and so experienced wouldn't be able to behave according to the value of we practice open and real communication and we check our ego at the door, we know we're going to have a problem. We're going to have a problem with the rest of the employees. It's not going to look like we really stand for anything. And we know our company functions better when we live those values. So we might have to make a difficult choice. And we've had some people say, hey, well, wait a minute, I'm the best person I'm sure you've seen. I'm the world expert in this topic. How could you not hire me? And it just isn't a culture fit. And you have to have both or you're going to have a problem. And you just can't get a bunch of people who want to live your values but don't have any expertise. So we're looking, for us, the best fit is people who will fit into our culture, live our core values, and have the requisite skill set to help us grow at the fast rate that we're growing. And one of those skill sets is growth, is being able to keep up with the company as it expands. And working for a 20-person company is very different than working for a 200-person company or a 2,000-person company. So it's a evolving challenge, but it takes an understanding and a commitment.
Hey, that's a great application. Thanks for sharing that and going into good detail there. A lot of our listeners are really interested in developing themselves and making themselves attractive to organizations. And so let me just kind of flip this a little bit and ask you, from your perspective, what could someone do to make themselves an attractive leadership candidate for a company like yours or, companies that you're used to working with?
Well, we have an interesting belief in what makes a great leader. We have a leadership model. It's quite simple, but we believe that the core of this leadership model is care. That is care for people and care for our cause. So you've got a leader would need to fit in the paradox of caring for the humans that they lead, but also being mindful of the business. We need leaders that set the vision. We need leaders that multiply people, and we need leaders that deliver results. So those are the four aspects of our leadership model. What someone can do, I think, to be a great leader is find somebody who would tell you the truth.
That's good.
That's a mentor, that's a spouse, that's a family member, or just a good friend. But so often, we get caught up in the hustle and bustle of our jobs, and we just forget about people, and the world occurs to us in a way that is hurtful to inspiring people. And so if you can do things as a leader, as an aspiring leader, to become more self-aware of who you are and how you can better communicate and understand and connect with people, and then have an advisor or friend or mentor that can tell you when you're off from that and how it is that what the gap might be between how you think you are occurring to people and how you are occurring to people, then I think that's how you become a better leader. And even Michael Jordan had a coach. He had somebody that could help him see things that he couldn't see in the heat of the game. And I think we all need that. I think this is kind of a new phenomena, but we just believe that humans are complex, and so as a leader, you have to understand the complexities. And that means listening and getting out of your own way and making it not about you, but about the people you're leading. And sometimes that's hard. And without somebody to help you see it at times, you might really stumble.
That's excellent. That is excellent. I laugh because I think you're spot on. Finding someone who's willing to really spend some time with you and tell you the truth, it's not always easy, but then sometimes when you get it, it's hard to listen to. So I think it's important. Thank you for sharing that.
Only always is it hard to listen to.
That's great clarification and very true. So I'd like to turn inward a little bit towards you and let's discover you a little bit more. Would you mind sharing with us, what you might consider one of your greatest leadership successes?
Yeah, I'd love to. Maybe my greatest leadership successes is the reason I'm here. The CEO of this company worked for me at another company. I was CEO of a software company, and we were a startup, and we only had a handful of employees. They were all programmers or graphic designers, and one of them said, "Hey, I've got this friend that needs a job, would love to work here." And I said, "Well, is he or she a programmer or a designer?" And they said, "No, he is getting a law degree and an MBA and is about finished." And I was, wow, I don't know how that's possible. But for some reason, I think this is the key part of the leadership opportunity and lesson is somebody who was that driven and ambitious. I thought I should meet, and I thought maybe I can help this person see the future differently. And I had no expectation of hiring him, but I thought I could be helpful to him because I could see he was trying to grow himself by his commitment to this education. And so I met with him, and I gave him a book that I thought he would find interesting, talking about the future of technology and software and the internet and how it would change things. This was in the late 90s. And I said, I think it could change your life. And and just how you see the world. I didn't expect to hear from him again. I thought he would at some point return the book, but he came back 2 days later and he was just on fire with so many questions, and his curiosity and his ambition and his desire to be a part of something was so infectious. I did hire him, and he kind of worked for me as an assistant until he graduated and went full time, and then he worked in business development. And he experienced something powerful in our culture that when we were acquired by another company and he saw a different culture, he left to go start his own software company and wanted it to be a certain way and insisted on that. And that has built Infusionsoft, which is now a 700-person company that's serving small businesses in a powerful way and making a difference in the world. And one of my greatest achievements is that he didn't become a lawyer. No offense to any lawyers listening, but
That's awesome. Yeah.
but he created a software company that's really having impact on a lot of personal lives of small business. And after several years, asked me if I'd be willing to help him scale the culture. And I was hired at 170 employees, and now we're at 700. And I'm really grateful to be a part of it. And that I took the time when it didn't seem like it made any sense to connect with a person, to connect with another human being, and what that's turned into for me, what that's turned into for him, what that's turned into for the world. And I believe leadership is doing something that wouldn't have happened anyway. It's changing the course of where something's going. And I look back and my life is different. His life is different. I think of the 700 people that this company employs. I think of all the partners. I think of all the customers. It happened because of some leadership, not just mine, but leadership that led to a different future. So, I'm grateful for that experience and thoughtful about what could have been different if I would have acted differently.
I love that story, and right at the heart of that story is you reaching out. I think that's such a critical lesson, because it's you were doing giving, you were doing mentoring and working with someone else, and in the end it turned out to be a great story. That's awesome, and I'm sure you reach out to a lot of people. In fact, I know you do.
Well, there's a great book that called Give and Take, written by Adam Grant, and that was a giving moment with no expectation of return, and yet there's been an awesome return in that I'm a part of this company. And I think that's what leaders need to be. They need to be givers, not takers, and believe that there will be a return if you make an investment in people. And I think it's a universal truth. There will be a return. You don't have to wonder.
Oh, I love that. That is awesome. So let me, this is all of us make mistakes along the way. So I'd like to ask you a question, and really these are two questions, and you can bundle them if you like, but I'm interested in some of, maybe one of your big leadership challenges that you faced, and then also interested in maybe an area where you made a leadership mistake and how you recovered.
So many things to choose from on the mistakes. Gosh. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges that I've faced has been, the hardest thing for me is to let somebody go. And it's so important as a leader that you can do that, make a decision. And what's helped me get better at that is knowing that if someone's not the right fit for this company and they're not succeeding, that by not telling them the truth, I'm kind of stealing from their life. Mm-hmm. I'm keeping them in a situation where they're struggling and frustrated, and no one wants to lose their job, but often I've had people say it's such a relief, but I didn't know how to get to this end. So it's hard for me to I know how hurtful that can be. I've experienced it, and that's a leadership challenge. And when you think about it, me not wanting to let somebody go where it's just not working is me protecting my ego. It's me looking out for me and not wanting to have a difficult conversation because it's hard for me, versus thinking about what am I doing for this employee and their growth if I'm keeping them under false pretense, if I'm not helping them or seeing them succeed, if this isn't working. Let's either fix it to work, or let's be honest and real and authentic and help them get someplace where they can be successful. So I faced that several times and still do. It's just never easy, but it is the right thing to do. And I think it's our egos that get in our way of doing some of those difficult things, because we like to be loved and we like to be popular, and sometimes that isn't the best for everyone. I was just going to add, you asked if I've made mistakes. I think the mistake I've made most, and I see is made most by leaders, is not being open to growth and feedback and thinking that you really know something, and making decisions based on that conviction of knowing something, without listening to others, without asking for feedback and input. It's a funny course as a leader, and as you get better at something, you want to show that, you want to prove that, you want to let everybody know that, and it has the opposite effect of your intent, which is to be successful. It absolutely undermines your work, and I've had several instances where I wanted to show who I was and what I'd accomplished and what I knew, and it has diminished the people around me where the outcome we wanted didn't occur because I was standing there by myself instead of with a bunch of people who are excited to want to help me do it. So, those are some of my experiences, and I just think it happens to all of us, and it's the thing that inexperienced leaders should be aware of, is how their ego can get in the way of them listening, and allowing others to bubble up the great work. You want to think only you can do it, and as soon as you think that, you're sort of on a path to some tough moments.
That is a great nugget. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much. Hey, I want to ask you a question. I actually get this question a lot from our listeners and from other people I associate with, and they always want to know, how do you deal with a bad boss?
That's a tough one. And a bad boss could be a lot of things. In most cases, I think breakdowns happen when there's inauthentic communication, and there's things that are unsaid that people feel. So, if I had a struggle with a bad boss or peer or anybody else, I've got to decide as a leader of myself, what's the future going to be? Am I going to be okay with that, or am I going to try and change the future? And the first place I probably ought to start is, what can I do differently, and how can I think about that person differently? What influence can I have? And you've got to try that. And if you are coming at and trying to work with this person with positive intent, without a bunch of judgment, without a story that's running in your head that they've always been this way and remember that one time, but you're really looking at every day and every week as a new opportunity to get to know them better and be productive. If that doesn't start to change them, then you might have to choose to leave. And why would you want to spend a bunch of your day and your week and your month away from your family or other things that you love, working for somebody who doesn't appreciate and value you? But it's easy to say it's them. It's easy to start with, well, it's them, and so I'm just stuck and I have no power in this. I would counsel anyone to listen. You own this differently, and you have a different outlook on this, and you try that. And if that's not working, and you can't see the effect of your change has on this relationship, then you might have to decide to leave. And if it's a great company and that's the isolated leader, I would start working on developing relationships somewhere else. So maybe I could go work for a different leader in the same company. And I would start developing and networking the relationships that might enable me to find another place in the company where I could be successful. But that's a complicated question with lots of nuances. And I'm sad that any of us have to deal with that situation. I'd like a world where leaders, there aren't bad bosses. There are bosses that might not always be perfect, but that are working to be better. And if we were all working together, and we could have the hope that this could change in weeks or months or quarters. It is the reality, and that's a tough one.
Well, I like a lot. I like what you said a lot. You're really driving the nail in the heart here. You're saying that we really start with ourselves, and I think that's the same with all of our relationships. And that's an excellent lens for us to look through. I know that you have spent a lot of time thinking about and developing the culture at Infusionsoft, and figuring out how to move the culture in a way that is going to be best for the overall objectives that you guys have set as the leaders. Are there any lessons that you've learned around culture, or establishing great culture, or what a great culture is?
Every company has a culture. Whether you like it or not, it evolves by how people treat each other and the things that matter at a company. So as a leader, if you don't like the culture, you can try and change it, but it's happening. It's happening beneath you. So I think that leaders should be trying to shape the culture to meet the strategic needs of their business and to fit for them. The things that we do, we want to be really clear about why what we do is important to the world. We want people who come here that care about helping small businesses succeed, and that is our clear purpose, and it's that simple. And if you aren't interested in that, you won't enjoy our culture. We want to have the things that we care about in our culture on the walls so people can see them. Critical to developing culture is when someone comes to your company, you sit down with them. In our case, it's a week of onboarding. Our folks don't spend a day on their job until they've had a week learning about our culture, our core values, our customers, our product. We don't want to spend the money to hire somebody and not have them clear about how we do business and what we expect of our employees and why it's such a great place to work. So that's an investment that I think you make in your culture. Those are some of the things that we've learned. And every couple of years we have people say, gosh, that's 5 days. It's really 6 business days. That's 6 business days of not producing for the business. How can you afford to invest in that? And our question is, how can we not invest in it? And it shows up in turnover. It shows up in unengaged workers. It shows up in unproductive employees if you don't get that clarity. So culture is a project of a continuous improvement. It's kind of a mountain without a top. You have to keep working at it. And I look at it as an organism. You're either going to add people that create strength in it, or they're going to suck the life from it. And your commitment to bring people in that are a fit and that are additive to the culture and a guardian of the culture is critical. And getting rid of and inviting them, people that aren't a fit and that are taking away from the culture, to invite them to go work someplace else where they are a better fit. Our culture isn't better than anybody else's. It's not right versus someone else's that is wrong. It's just ours. And if you're not a fit, there's probably a lot of companies where you could go and be happy, but we don't want people who aren't additive to our culture. And I think if you're trying to build a culture, got to be absolutely committed to hire, train, and then fire people to that cultural commitment you have.
Oh, that's a great answer, and there are a lot of lessons in there. So thank you for sharing. I know your background, and you're a very successful entrepreneur. You've worked in a lot of startup situations and been part of capitalizing companies and things like that. So I just can't help resist asking this question. A lot of our listeners are also entrepreneurial minded, and maybe they have a good idea and they've even gotten started. How do you recommend, or what do you recommend that a person might do if they think they have a good idea and they've got a little traction? What might they do to make their startup successful?
Well, step one is you have to be clear about your business model and what's the value exchange between what you have and what someone might pay for. And I know a lot of, I've seen, and I've been involved in a few where we thought we had a great idea, but we didn't really discover what is the value of the idea and what would a customer be willing to pay for what it is we're providing. Often great ideas are based on a data point of one, which is the person who came up with the idea. And too often people put in a bunch of time and even raise money from friends and family when it really wasn't a sound business idea. And that doesn't mean months and months of research. It just means getting quickly to testing that idea. And so being willing to fail fast, discover, every breakdown turning into a breakthrough, and trying things and testing that value exchange as quickly as you can to know, gosh, what is it and how do I iterate towards the best answer? Too often people have ideas, think it's great, spend a bunch of time, raise money, and find out because they were locked onto it being one way or the right way, ended up being frustrated and disappointed and disappointing friends and family that may have invested. And so I think it's this idea of a lean startup, and there's a great book about it, this process of getting something minimal that you can test and test and test and test. And that takes courage because you might find out your great idea isn't great. Or you might find out that it's not even an idea, it's something that's already been done. The longer you keep it to yourself and you keep it in a closed environment and you don't go out and test it and try it and let the world pressure test it in any way possible. And by the way, with the internet, it's so much easier to reach bigger groups of folks who might be able to share with you how they see what you do or what they would pay for it. To me, that's the key. Be willing to learn, be willing to grow, be willing to be comfortable with failing, and sticking with the iteration. And of course, if you're getting no traction, that's the feedback you need that it's not a great idea. And maybe there's something else you can find, or maybe you learn something from that creates a new idea. Quickly iterating, failing fast, checking your ego so you are willing to hear it. That's how great ideas get momentum, then get funding, then get employees and start to go.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That's another wealth of knowledge. And I know you've seen a lot, so this is very powerful. Thank you. Through the conversation we've had, you've mentioned a couple of books, and I've made a few notes about them. I love books. I know you read a lot. What kind of books, other books, maybe have had a big impact on your life or your leadership life or your life in general that we could share on our website?
I'll tell you the couple that I've read recently that are awesome for creating culture. And I mean, one of the best leadership books I've read. This is like one of my top 5 all-time favorite books, and I'm just finishing it. Is called Return on Character, and the subtitle is The Real Reason Leaders in Their Companies Win. It's kind of positioned towards CEOs, but it is not at all about just that. And it takes an approach to leadership that I don't think has ever been taken. It calls out 4 aspects of leadership that are really character habits, and it's based on science. The author isn't a business person. He's a PhD in psychology, and then he's had a leadership consulting practice, but it's a great book. It's a game changer, I think, for most people. It was for me, and I read a lot of leadership books. It's just awesome. The other book that I haven't gotten all the way through, but is called Uncontainable, and it's the author's the chairman and CEO of the Container Store, mm-hmm. and the subtitle of that one, and I'm just telling you this because it gives some perspective, but how passion, commitment, and conscious capitalism built a business where everyone thrives. And it's just about engaging employees in the kind of culture you need to get the very best from people, not to take it from them, but to give them the opportunity to be their best. And that's an awesome book. The other recent book is Give and Take, which I mentioned. I love that book. We love here at Infusionsoft Multipliers by Liz Weissman. Mm-hmm. It's a great book on leadership and how to get out of your way to get more out of the people that you're leading. And then we love Jim Collins and all of his books, Good to Great and How the Mighty Fall and Built to Last. Great lessons. There is a great book I'll share with you that Jim Collins wrote long before he was famous called Beyond Entrepreneurship. And that book is a great book for an entrepreneur who's trying to define their values and their purpose. And there's a framework in there to help you do that. And that's kind of a gem that not everybody knows about. But if you're thinking about a company that's starting to go, there are great tools in there to help you get it right from the start.
Hey, that's exciting. Right there is a great little library. So thank you. So Hal, as we wind this down, I'd like to ask you or give you an opportunity if you'd like to share with us for a few minutes and tell us about Infusionsoft and share with us a little bit about this company, what it does.
I love Infusionsoft. It's the best company I've ever worked for, and that's because we just have passion to help small business succeed. And I think what makes us different is that we understand how personal it is to have a small business, what it means to maybe miss a vacation or worry about a car payment because your small business is struggling. So this company was born out of our founders who had a small business and saw the struggles and the frustrations to be effective in sales and marketing. And they built software that's a subscription that automates and creates opportunities for the small business to really leverage their talents and get more out of their time. And so our product helps small businesses grow sales, get organized, and save time. And most small businesses either want to increase sales or they want to have a lifestyle business where they don't have to work as hard but can still pay their bills. And it's powerful marketing automation with sales CRM capabilities. And we have 30,000 customers and on our way to, we believe, 1 million. We believe that this product can help the middle class and also third world developing countries where entrepreneurs and small business owners need a tool that can help them take advantage of the internet and automation that's in technology and be successful in what they're trying to do. We love entrepreneurs. Our first core value is we empower entrepreneurs. We love people who will take ownership and want to go do something about it. And that's what small business owners are. And we love them and we want to help them. So that's what we're all about. And we aren't going to change that. We're super clear on it.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. This has been an amazing show, and I knew you would be an awesome guest. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you. Do you have any? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say I appreciate, Gordon, the invitation, and thank you for the great conversation.
Well, so in closing, do you have any final thoughts or anything you'd just like to share that's come to mind?
Yeah, I have one final thought. To be a great leader, you can learn the habits of great leadership. They're basically character habits. They aren't skills. They aren't things you go to a school for. They're mostly things you probably knew by second grade or playing on the Little League team. And somehow the world beats that out of a lot of us. We forget it through high school, through college, through that first couple of years, a couple of bad bosses maybe. But in the end, great leaders care, listen, and understand people. And that's something we are all capable of. That's not a special skill that you can only get in a certain place. And I love that possibility for every person to be a leader. I really believe it. I've wondered about it for years. And now I've gotten really clear that it isn't something you go buy somewhere. It's who you are. And, being a leader is much better than knowing how to be a leader. And that would be my encouragement to anybody that's listening to. That's all out there for you. Go do that and be a leader.
Thank you for listening to our Leaders247 podcast. We want to know what you think. Please email us at feedback@leaders247.com. If you have follow-on questions for any of our guests, let us know and we will get answers and post the replies. Please remind your friends and family to check us out at www.leaders247.com or find us on iTunes. Leaders247 is all about bringing the best content possible to anyone trying to become a leader or become a better leader. At Leaders247, we like to recommend books. In this podcast, podcast, I recommend you check out my book on Selling to Business. Selling to Business is a self-help book designed to create authentic, long-lasting, powerful, and profitable associations. Anyone who is responsible for developing and maintaining relationships, whether internal or external to their organization, will find this book full of quick and valuable suggestions. While this book focuses on how to get started in enterprise selling, the lessons shared give practical clues and examples of how to lead, how to develop, and how to interact with people for an authentic leadership experience. If you want to sharpen how you achieve your goals, how you prioritize time with leaders, how you take advantage of your executive time when you get it, or how to continue to develop your talents, Selling to Business is a good source and a quick read. I will include a 30% discount code in our podcast notes. At Leaders247, we maintain a list of books on our website that have been recommended by our guests. If you'd like a reading suggestion from one of our guests, start your purchase with us by visiting our website. That way, we receive the benefit of revenue sharing through Amazon's affiliate program, which allows us to continue to bring great content to you. Tune in for our next podcast where we feature another interview with an insightful leader.